I wanted to actually first ask Professor Nil. So actually, as you were speaking, I was writing down sort of like questions that I had, and the first thing I wrote down was, what are the differences between Gastarbeiter and the new Turkish diaspora? But I actually thought your point that you made about, focusing on issues rather than identity was very, well put and very important to make. But sort of not necessarily about the identities of these different groups, but I wanted to ask you about, how these two groups see integration in Germany, because they're obviously coming from very different places, very different times, and I think especially because there is this very long history of Turkish migration, it's interesting maybe to hear how that has changed in the German context.
Thank you. You can hear me, right? Yeah. Okay, so I don't need to use. So I think it's a good question. First, the Gastarbeiters are more or less, we can say that they're voluntarily decided to come here because of the economic. Okay, they may have suffered from some economic conditions in Turkey, but still, at least they volunteer to come here to be part of, to work for, to support German economy. So in this respect, there was a voluntary basis. But in the last, but of course, we can say the semi-voluntary, or let's say, because we know that they may not have this economic wellness in Turkey. But not only the new diaspora, but when we look at 60s and 80s, we also see another, flow as well. It's based on political reasons too, so it's forced one, and ours becomes a forced one as well. I think, in our encounters, what I feel is, remember the guilt that I mentioned to you about to be selected or to be, invited here. The same guilt goes for. When I'm compared to the Turks living here by the inhabitants of the city. So it's like, I don't know how to put it, but it's like, I felt that I'm more welcomed, that I don't know what it is that they feel. Get what I mean? More educated, the English speaking thing, whatever it is. But it's all of a sudden openly said. And I think this is also shows something about the hierarchy of the Turks living here. The personal hierarchies, it reflects it. But so that's why I realized that this integration thing, also if I feel it like this, it's not a big surprise that a big football player comes with such argument as well. But I'm not telling that I'm also critical to him not being, supporting the Kurdish football player. But so. That's how I feel, but
No, it's very interesting. I actually have several friends in the academic world who are, of this new diaspora as well, and it seems like a growing population, but also a population that, I live in a Turkish neighborhood, and my friends who are in academia are so much better integrated into sort of German, with other ethnic Germans compared to like my Turkish neighbors, for example. I actually wanted to then ask Yahya sort of your thoughts on integration as well. You mentioned a little bit that Syrian refugees maybe don't always feel like they want to integrate, but I actually wanted to ask, how does this compare to, say, Syrians in, say, Turkey? Do they also feel that they should learn the language in Turkey or not? It seems like it's, we are very focused on Germany in this particular conference, but maybe like a wider view would be really helpful if you have one.
Yeah, this is a very good question. Actually, the people, the Syrian in Turkey is a little bit different. Historically, there is a relation among the two sides, Syria and integration. I think integration in Turkey is a little bit easier than to be integrated in Germany, not because of the religion background, but just because the cultural concepts, which is a little bit closer than to be in Germany. Besides that, there is another situation that the Turkey authority, they don't give the refugee any help. So when we want to make connection between the integration and the help, here's the problem. People in Germany say that if we didn't integrate it, so we will lose some privilege. We have to go to the job center all the time and prove to the job center that we are going to the language course. If we didn't, so the man in the job center will say, you should go. If you didn't, I will cut some of your money. So this kind of procedures is very bad for people. That they don't think that it's fair to be like this. Besides that, there is many people who say that the international laws guarantee my rights to have this protection. It shouldn't be banned. It shouldn't be related to the help I get from the government. So many of people thinking that they just staying here for a few years and they have to go back. So they think that it's not fair to send them to their language course and to force them to learn Dutch. One of them said me for once, you can't take the horse to the water, but you can't force him to drink. So you can't send many refugees or many people to the schools of language, but in the end, you can't force them to learn it. So it's very complex. I don't think the same situation in Turkey, in Germany, but I think it's more difficult, the integration in Germany.
Absolutely, it's very interesting. And then maybe I can follow this by asking Sasha, I mean, you have, I think, an incredibly difficult job. Not only are you working for, an agency that has this incredibly difficult task that's very highest profile, but you are actually the spokesperson for this, which is, of course, incredibly challenging. But I actually wondered, I mean, so you're the State Office for Refugee Affairs in Berlin is one thing, but I actually wondered if you had any insight on how it compares to Germany more generally, or sort of integration efforts more widely in Europe.
Now, as far as I know, we try to follow up the same steps everywhere in Germany, that we force people to go to integration courses. And yes, we asked them to give us a proof that they appeared there within their course. Because in Germany, in the past, we had problems integrating people, for example, from Lebanon or from Chechnya, where we didn't offer the opportunity to go to language courses. Even these people from Lebanon said, yeah, we're only staying here for a couple of years and then we're going back to Beirut or wherever. And they stayed here for good. They weren't integrated, they didn't go to school, they weren't allowed to work. And what did they do? They organized their drug trafficking within the city. And now we watch the movies on Netflix saying, oh, well, look at these guys with the huge cars. No, so I completely disagree. We do have to, it's a form of given and taken. And we do have to have the same standards in the south of Germany as well as in the north or in the east of Germany when it comes to integrational steps. And of course, whether these people from Syria or Iraq say, well, I don't want to go through the course, yeah, well, then they don't get the money. That's clear. It's a thing of given and taken. At the same time, the law says the kids have to go to school. So they learn the language. How could the parents really think that their kids are going to translate in contact with German authorities all the time and put all the pressure on the kids because they're the only ones in the family able to speak German? I think that's unfair. And when it comes to the conditions where people live, refugees live in Germany, they are definitely there's a large variety. We even have a place in Lower Saxony where they still have tents, just in case nobody living in there. But they wouldn't have the national media there or the international media, and nobody cares. In the area where I come from, Frankfurt, the real Frankfurt, and Camille, you poor thing. She studies in Frankfurt East, and I know exactly where people live there, where the Syrians live, where the Afghanis live, because 25 years ago, these were the places, very remote places, former restaurants and hotels in the woods, where the people from Bosnia or Serbia had to live, where you have a bus 4 times per day. And if you miss it, you have to do the 10 miles walk to the next village. No, it's quite difficult in this country here.
Right. I mean, I think this is a really good point, and that it is, everything is relative. Of course, there are still many challenges for migrants and refugees in Germany, but compared to this situation in Syria, or if you're a political refugee from Turkey, this is obviously, a threat to your life. That's very, very different than having difficulties finding housing, which I think if you live in Berlin, you're familiar with this already. Lorna, I really found your speech to be really inspiring. I think that it was very well written, like you should be like the keynote's opening speech sort of thing. But I think you made a point a little bit that often in these sort of formats you feel a bit like you're preaching to the choir. But I actually wanted to say I've been on the Refugee Voices tour, actually with this your colleague right here, and it was really wonderful. And in particular, I went on it with some family members who were visiting, and they really, had not come into contact with Syrian refugees before, and so it was very valuable for them to get to know sort of people that they wouldn't otherwise get into contact with, and sort of understand the story better. And I think you made a very good point in your intervention that civil society has really stepped up to the plate in this crisis. And I'm curious in particular about what role you see your organization specifically, but civil society more generally, playing with integration in Berlin.
I think one thing that's kind of an example of what we have done with Refugee Voices tours was in 2015, when I came up with the idea. I was just getting to this point when I just felt like I couldn't do anything, and the situation was much bigger than me. But I thought, okay, what do I do? What can I do? And what is my profession? I am a tour guide. Okay, so I'm going to find a way to help people through something that I know how to do. And I think that if there were more programs like this, because actually tour guiding is not that useful, but if there are more programs where there are people who have a certain profession who can actually be a tandem partner with somebody who has arrived as a refugee, who had that profession themselves in their native country, then they can actually be shown the path to where they want to get. And I think there's not enough of this, and a lot of people arrive in Germany not really understanding, because Germany is complicated. The administration is complicated. The exams you have to sit are complicated. And I think if you had somebody who was kind of your partner during this time, showing you the way, for example, a doctor with a doctor, or a mechanical engineer with a mechanical engineer, this kind of thing would actually really be a great way to integrate people, to get them speaking with a German person, and to get them understanding their career path in Germany as well. So for me, this is kind of something on a practical level that I think Refugee Voices Tours offers. On a more personal level, I think it's just a really good way of providing a platform for people to speak with people who they often hear about but don't get to speak to, which is refugees, obviously.
Great. I just want to check on the time. How are we doing?
Right now is...
Because I don't have a...
2:18.
2:18. And when are we planning to finish? That's the real question.
We're planning for like 10 more minutes maybe,
Okay.
so, but it all depends on you. If someone has a question.
10 more minutes would be great.
I was going to say, I mean, I have like an endless amount of questions pretty much, but I wanted to also offer to the audience if you have any, burning questions as well. Yes?
Maybe I have a question, because now we had this whole issue of like not wanting to integrate. I feel like there's like some anecdotal evidence of like a 60-year-old man who doesn't want to learn German. I mean, he's not gonna join the workforce with 65 anymore when he has learned the language anyway, because then he's out of the workforce by age. And are there any data, or is there any like set of support of like people not wanting to integrate? Because I have much more the feeling that the people want to contribute and want to join and like want to help. And I think the language requirement, it should be a little less rigid, saying while they're still learning the language, already having like jobs and internships and like having that contact with German society to actually be able to practice their language. Because once a refugee has a job and has like a scheduled life, they don't feel necessarily like a refugee anymore, but like just part of the society, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong on that side.
Actually, there is no statistics. I can't give any number about those people who have the same situation that they. But in general, the people in this age, they have more problems towards these integration issues. A lot of people who were very lucky to find a job without achieving this the language course were much faster with integration process. You mean, when you go to any kind of job, just beside two German people and speak to them all the time, you will get more values, you will get more information, you will get more common concepts about the culture. You will be much faster integrated than to go to a language course with 13 people, 2 of them coming from Russia, 2 of them coming from Afghanistan, and just the teacher. And this is very complex situation. You can't go there and be integrated just because you stayed 4 or 5 months. You have to go, you have to find a job. And the standard of market labor in Germany is very high. And this is a very hard problem. If you want to work as anything, you have to make this Ausbildung, which is not an easy. So very little people can be lucky to find a job. I have met a lot of students who just going to the language course, but suddenly they found somehow kind of job. After 3 months, you will notice the difference. They will be able to speak much faster, and they will be more integrated in the society through the colleagues. So I think we have to find a solution for the war. You can't spend all your time just waiting in the camp or in language school. This high standard, we have to find a solution to it. People asking all the time for study and for jobs, and unfortunately they don't find it ready all the time.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can just briefly add. I mean, like you said, I don't think there is data on this, but maybe one sort of point of clarification. We've been using the term refugees very sort of indeterminately, and one thing that you may or may not be aware of is, of course, there's different types of this sort of like humanitarian protection that you can get. So if you are, so the international legal definition of a refugee is someone who cannot live in their home country because they have a reasonable fear of persecution because of belonging to a certain group, political, sexual orientation, ethnic, whatever, which basically means that they, effectively will never be able to return home. Whereas many people, and in particular Syrians, are granted a different type of humanitarian protection, which is more temporary, right? Because it's not that they can't go home, it's that they can't go home right now. And so I can understand that, you know, if you only have, you know, legal status in the country for 2 years, learning German is really hard. I struggle with it a lot. You know, it's a lot of work to think about, you know, learning a language for a whole year, working maybe for a year, and then going back home. I mean, this is, yeah, a tough thing, absolutely. You had a question?
Yeah, no, not a question, also an input to the conversation. But first of all, I want to say that for 3 years working in Berlin and many places around Germany with the topic of newcomers, and also 3 years in Jordan, where I come from, I am yet to meet somebody who, I can use the sentence, does not want to integrate in terms of personal experience. Second of all, I think there are certain things to be taken into consideration when we take into account the situation of a person. I've met people who find it frustrating to integrate and debate and criticize what integration means and what kind of process, and reflect on what their status is. And I think the two important topics to take into account are, first of all, something that is not mentioned a lot, which is the psychological situation of people who arrive. The role of trauma goes unmentioned in settings like that, but it plays such a fundamental part. You mentioned, for example, that there are nurses or doctors who come on the reception point, and you find that 10% of the people need some sort of support. If psychological trauma is to be taken into account, I am sure that you will find that it's 100% is the number that needs support. Like 100%, no exceptions. And when somebody goes and they stay for the first year before they moved out, thanks to LRF, from the places where they stayed for 200 people in a room, that you cannot even sleep. So add to the psychological trauma to your current situation right now. So when you go to German class and not learn German while you're not getting any form of sleep, while you have the uncertainty of the family who are being killed there, and the trauma that you're trying to process with no private space and support whatsoever, there's an integration issue here, but it's not because somebody does not want to integrate, even if they express their emotions in a different way. And the other part is what you mentioned right now, a fundamental part in our psychology is uncertainty. Uncertainty plays a big role in each of our individuals and what we want to do. If I feel if I'm studying to an exam and I'm not sure I'm going to take the exam, for example, compare your behavior, unconsciously even, to if that exam will be taken and if it's going to lead you somewhere. You know, we need to put the same standards that we put to ourselves in terms of behavior that we put for the newcomers. And I think we would stay away from a statement that somebody does not need to integrate or does not want to integrate. It just doesn't exist.
Thanks. Maybe we can do like one more question and then wrap up. Yes?
I actually have two questions. One goes to Professor. How do you think ethnic community-based organizations like diaspora organizations can contribute to the integration of member groups, like members in the groups? Do you think they are effective ways, considering the structural and social distance that they encounter from the whole society? What do you think would be the best way that they can contribute as an agency, kind of? And the second question goes to Mr. Weinstein here. I'm also asking, how do you think the government can create a synergy with the private sector or probably civil society to draft like a united action towards resolving the refugee problems in Germany? For example, the Syrian influx of in 2016 was like a very big call for Germany to really act fast on this emerging trend of refugee influx. The government alone might find it difficult, maybe resource-wise, or perhaps resource in terms of economic or human resource. Do you think the private sector, like the corporate agencies, can come in? And if they can come in, how do you think the government can really create that synergy? Either the corporate run as an agency, like taking responsibility of some certain aspect of migrant management and things like that? Or do we have to invite third-party civil society? A kind of a synergy. What's your opinion on that?
Thank you for the question, because it enables me also to clarify the first question, because I am afraid that I may be misunderstood. I never ever want to say that we are much better integrated than the Gastarbeit. I mean, if it's such a thing or feeling comes, that's not what I want to tell, first things first. And secondly, I think if you really want to be a community that really benefits from each other, I think there should be a two-sided process. So, but here we are only, I'm not telling German people to learn Arabic, Turkish, whatever. I'm not talking about it. But I'd like to give an example from the Turkish community. I've met with many, second, third generations academics, I mean, in Germany, and most of them, I mean, are encouraged always to work on issues of, ethnicity, religion, whatever. So, I mean, even if you want to carry on, I mean, if you know the language, and if you feel the integrated, is there in my speech it was clear, is there a way of getting out of this loop of being migrant for good? Because, I mean, many of them didn't even see Turkey and didn't speak Turkish. So that's why, I mean, what do we talk about when we talk about integration, at what stage and when and how? I think the feeling of belonging is quite important. And what I experience and say that, I mean, if we manage to think not only to integrate to this society, but the societies within we live, and develop projects and platforms to hear each other and to learn from each other. As I stated in my discussion, I think it would be good not only to develop policies for Germany, but also for the future of all. So that's what I think. So thank you.
Synergies and cooperation. We do cooperate with many agencies, NGOs already. And as I mentioned before, there was never ever so much money there in their public households for integrational measures. They might come from volunteer groups, they might come from NGOs. You get the money, you're funded these days. Once you have migration in the headline, you get money. That's for sure. We do have data about their integration hurdles in our houses, especially when it comes to women 50 years and older. They don't go to the courses anymore. They simply refuse to go. Not because they don't, well, they don't even know the word integration. They want to be left alone. They try to muddle through somehow in their new neighborhood. They know where to go shopping. They know who speaks Arabic. Full stop, end of story. And of course, we talk about people you know much better than anybody of us. Years of civil war, then the trip to Turkey, then the next trip on the boat to Greece, then the balcony route, and this does something to people, and they're simply tired. And people in my age, I'm over 50 years old now, but people in my age who went through this mess for years and years, they're simply tired, and they're getting old so quickly. It's incredible. So you're damn right when we said 10% of the people need instant help and other people need help afterwards. What we have in our homes is this feeling of security. You know, some of them live there, and they not longer in this survival mode in their shelter, you know, with no privacy and so on. They can close doors, they have the money, they go shopping, they cook their own meals, and suddenly they relax. And once they relax, all the pictures from Syria or Iraq come back, and then they're lost, and we are lost too. We don't have the keys to approach these people. They are simply there's no point talking about integration with these people. They need psychological support. There's one container village where I was so surprised that 12 Syrian men went to the psychology group there. Syrian men going to psychologists, excuse me. And then it's unthinkable 10 years ago. If you think about it, we have an open men's group of psychologists for Syrian men in Damascus. No way. Now 12 men attend there every Monday night, talk about what they felt. Their kids, they are supported by an artist, and they would paint pictures about what they went through in Syria and then later on in Turkey. And camps in Turkey are not like camps in Europe, excuse me. So, yes, quite a lot to do. And of course, cooperation is always important. When you talk about psychology, we don't have that many psychologists who speak the Arabic language or Persian or whatever. Think of all the people from Eritrea, the young African boys, what they went through. Ugly stories, very ugly. But it's our duty as the administration of this country, as our Chancellor, Mrs. Merkel, said, we're gonna make it. Yeah? You remember that sentence? We're gonna make it. And I really want her to be right. I want to make it too. But what she didn't tell the Germans is it's a hell lot of work until we succeed.
Okay, one last
I just
comment
have one
and
question for
then
you,
okay, the last
regarding
two comments and then we finish. Yeah.
Just because I have a lot of friends now who are trying to find psychological support in Berlin, and they are not finding it because they do want to find it in Arabic. And is there anything being done in Berlin to start having something there for people?
We do have the ambulance within their university clinic Charité. Then we have Xenion, our NGO, specialized on psychological support, also in their mother language. The contracts for the Charité are not going to be prolonged because the building has to be refurbished, but we try to find an alternative. Though we do quite a lot, but you said that 100%, let it be 50% and we still have a problem.
I had a friend who went to the Charité and he was told that half of Syria is here right now. So
Half of Syria. Mm.
Yeah.
The best way now is, and it's not the best, the possible way. There are some organizations that develop apps, applications, and hotlines to at least to get
Hotline.
temporary sort of support. And
Crisis
this
center.
is possible in Berlin.
Yeah.
And it's not ideal. It's like it will help a little bit. I mean, it's worth trying.
Maybe that's an idea for the startup.
Well,
It's already
it's like the
exists.
social enterprises, and I think they do a much better job than what a startup with its profit orientation would go to. Just talking about business structure.
Well, my friend, some people have to survive, and they need the money.
In Berlin, the startups are so popular, so
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
finally someone will do it.
Startups.
People from Berlin, listen.
I have a really short question.
Can we have one final intervention from Yahya?
Actually, during 3 years, if you want to have a look to the activities of the refugee, you will notice that the majority of the activities goes to the women and to the kids. But what about the men who are coming from the families? Little bit activities go for the men. And this is very bad because those men will spend all the time smoking and wandering in the streets and making troubles for the family and just asking the girls why you dress like this. This is very bad if you want to concentrate just on the women, on the kids, and ignoring the men. So it's a very normal result that they will say, okay, we will not be integrated. So we have to focus on them as well. It's very important. If you want to make this family calm and in a normal atmosphere, you have to focus of all family members.
Okay, one short
Super
question.
About funding, I agree with you that in the last 3 years and before that, there is funding for migration projects, and it's like not only funding, operational support as well, and I benefit of it and it pays my salary as well. I'm scared of the future with the new political changes in Germany and our new interior ministry, and I'm thinking how will funding go in the next few years. I'm wondering what your expectations is.
How would I know?
Yeah, I think anyone who receives government funding knows it's anyone's guess, really.
I feel it's almost a safe guess that it's gonna start to dry out soon.
I doubt it,
Let's hope not.
Interesting.
Yeah, let's hope not.
but I don't know.
All right.
Okay, so thank you. Thanks, Julia, and thanks to all of you, our speakers, for coming here.